Film today's show from a recently used set. On that note, topic of today's program, Cryptids of the Northwest. In particular, what's here in Oregon. So in Oregon we have Skookum, Guanche, Oma, Yeren, Redbone people, uh, Gugway, Dogman, etc. So we'll see if anyone shows up. So the tracks that I found yesterday are actually something I've known of since about 87. My friend who lived down in that area, who was aware of the Skookum woman who came into the area with her child, the neighborhood creeper, uh, he saw the Dogman thing come in 87. It hadn't been there previously. So when he found out that thing was coming through, he gave me a call. I went down on my motorcycle at that time in 87, and I watched, the Skookum woman with her child playing in the area. And I think it was a Thursday night anyway. I remember I had to go to work the next day, and I saw her all of a sudden grab up her child and run for flipping cover. She ran to the shadows, she skirted the bushes, and then she flipping disappeared. I didn't see what scared her. I didn't know what had scared her. All I had was a story that my friend had told me. So the following day, I went back down on my motorcycle, and oh my God, I found this freaking inky dog tracks. So that thing has been passing through that particular area since 87 that I'm aware of. And from what my friend told me, those tracks show up every fall. I didn't expect them to be there, but I figured for curiosity I'd go down and see if they were, and yeah, they were. So those tracks passed through, and I don't know if the individuals got an injury or if they're doing some sort of other thing. Here, let me grab some reading glasses. Hello, everyone. Glad to see you here. Uh, I'm going to probably run this a little longer because I kind of want to go over a lot of the cryptids in this area. And I also want to let you know, I haven't, like 90% of what I've shown you so far on my YouTube channel has been within my city limits. I haven't even gone into the woods hardly. And once you get out in the woods in this area, oh my God, you find some just wild stuff. Great big structures, really odd stuff. But yeah, I'm restricted to being here inside city limits. And even the dog man that I live near, he was in Douglas County, and he was right on the edge of city limits. So to think that these things aren't living in the same area as you, uh, wake up. They are. Hey, Theo. How you doing? I mean, Chris. So Theo's my buddy Chris, longtime friend. He's very familiar with some of my stuff. He's been to some of my sites with me, and he's had some interesting experiences with me. So thank you, Chris, for joining us today. And I know you understand what's going on with these guys. Hey, Lena, welcome. Glad you made it in from Texas. And thank you, Chris, for being here. So yeah, there are more cryptids around you than you might realize. I mean, the one that came to our property, the Oma female, she went through town to get to our property. We were right on the border. I mean, half our property was in county, half our property was in city. Yeah, no problem, Lena. You're welcome. It's nice to have people from all over the world because this information doesn't change. Their behaviors are the same. It doesn't matter if they're a Skookum, an Oma, a dogman or what have you, they all communicate, it seems, very similarly. I mean, some of their languages are different, and I found some languages I can't quite understand. I've seen some like stick layouts that look like cuneiform. I've seen some stick layouts that look like ancient Hindi, and that really kind of confuses me. So I think these creatures, I haven't necessarily seen these creatures, I just found their writing. So I think these things are, they've got to somehow be a primary being. They have to be something that either we interacted with or we learned from. Because some of the other stuff I hear, like when they say words, sometimes I'll hear Chinese words, like Gigi, which means thank you, or Chahat, which is ancient Turkish, Urdu, and that means love. I've also heard other words from other languages and had to look them up. So, however these things communicate, it's got to be in a very primary language grouping, or it's got to be what Uncle Ong said, that it's the original language, and every other language that we understand today came from, cryptid languages. And if they go back as far as Uncle Ong claimed, I could see that, to be honest. I mean, my family, native family heirloom, my medicine heirloom comes from 30,000 years ago. It's an item that's been handed down for a very long time through my Maya family. And every medicine person has some sacred item that they hand down, matrilineally, typically. Sometimes it's patrilineal, depending on the custom of the tribe. So keep those kinds of things in mind. So, do we have any questions? Yoti. Some claim there are some squash in Southfield, Michigan, which in southern Michigan, miles from Detroit. Actually, I have seen pictures of red-haired freaking Bigfoot. I think they're probably Skookum in buildings in Detroit, abandoned buildings. People have taken pictures and they post them online. So I wouldn't doubt it. I've got allergy issues. And oh, God. Excuse me. I have to grab my inhaler. There's a lot of smoke from the forest fires that are still going on here. And unfortunately, I'm so sorry. The last couple of days have been really bad for smoke. Hang on. Pardon that. That's the biggest dog man I've had. Oh, wow. Probably the biggest track I found of a dog man. Oh. Was a few years ago. I actually found it near one of the ponds. Not near where I work, but, excuse me, down by another pond. It's got a lot of turtles in it. Let me try to flip this back around. Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. It was probably 12 or 14 inches across. It was so big I didn't want to be there even in the daylight looking at it. And that was where what I think might be a dogman shaman comes down. I'm pretty sure it was his track. And I have seen him. He's scraping 11 and a half, maybe 12 feet tall, and he's got to be 5 feet wide. He's Huge. Yeah. So where I live is in the Willamette Valley. This valley has more cryptids in it than people realize. We've got cryptids that go out west of this town, a bunch of dogmen. North of this town in the fields, a bunch of dogmen. Down south, we got a bunch of dogmen and Oma. When you get down towards like London Lake area, London Lake area has Badgerman, Oma, and Guanche in the area. I've seen the Guanche in the area. I've heard the calls of the dogmen, and I've seen the evidence of the Oma. And around that lake, I mean, when they went in, I think it was BRFO showed up like 6, 8 months ago, and they were booning all over town. I think they were here to investigate the stuff down at London Lake, but they only looked at the trackway area, which is the southern end of the lake, and they don't really pass through that area a lot. Where they really do pass through on that lake is all down the western borderline of that lake and the northern end. The one picture I have of the Badger Man sitting cross-legged, I mean, is actually sitting on the north end of London Lake. So that's food for thought. And in the only individual I've seen around the lake, which was a Guanche individual other than the Badger Man on the north, was an individual on the western side, and he was a Guanche man, looked like a big gorilla. So we have quite a selection. And my father had interactions with these things when he was trapping. He got harassed and he got his traps bent in half sometimes and thrown into trees. Some of his catches got released. So the family groups of these cryptid individuals have been here at least since the 30s. But when you talk to the natives and you learn about the lore of the area, we've been around these things forever. There is no day that we haven't been. That was interesting. I wonder what that was. Might have been somebody on a bicycle. I think there's a bike path right behind me. So, yeah, I mean, you don't really have to go too far anywhere to really do any research on these things. Anywhere you find a snapstick, you're going to find one. Anywhere you find kana or kanji on the ground, their language, you're going to find them. I mean, you're going to find evidence of them at the very least. You might find tracks like, the really cool ones that I can find every once in a while. But yeah, I mean, locally, this area is so riddled with them, it's not even funny. There's got to be hundreds of them alone that live on this river, and we never see them. We never interact with them. We never get harmed by them. So, I think a lot of our concepts about them are kind of mythic. I think we're, afraid of the childhood myths about them instead of the potential adult reality about what they might really be. Hey, Mary. Oh, yeah, I'm doing well. Seems like everybody in this area is coming down with something or another, but I'm pretty strong. It doesn't really get to me. And I'm always so outdoors, I don't have a chance to really get put behind. I'm aware they're Bigfoot. Yeah, you have a lot of Bigfoot up there, Chris. Theo. Yeah, I know. I hope that you can get that pond refilled so that they can come down and get water again. Yeah, Chris's property, where they are, has quite a family group. I think they're Skookum or maybe Guanche up there, and they've more noises and knocks. Yeah, you're probably going to get that until you can get that pond refilled for them. So one of the concerns that the cryptids up on this man's property had was they wouldn't have access to water. There's no real springs up where that area is. They're up in the mountains. So the only local water source for the cryptids is a pond on this man's property. So, they were having problems when they first moved in because the property had been setting for a while. And the family group of cryptids up there got very, protective of their land. So they had some, pounding on the walls. I went out and took some pictures of that, muddy handprints, and found out what was going on and why were they having a disturbance. And it was their water supply. They needed drinking water. So we let the cryptids up there know that they could have access to that pond, and all of a sudden everything calmed down. So sometimes, you can have a simple resolution if a cryptid is trying to get your attention. It may be for something very simple. And, don't overlook that. Don't escalate it. Try to address it immediately. Animals will come for our help all the time. We see that in videos all the time where, young animals or a mate will come, hey, hey, help me, my parent is trapped, or my mate is trapped, can you get my kids out of the drain? I'm a duck, what the heck? So, don't think that any other critter, including us, will go out and ask for help if they need it. So that's something to keep in mind. Maybe you can avoid more drastic situations if you address something simple soon instead of later. Hey, Brandon, how you doing? And welcome. I'm glad you made it. Um, yeah, I'm gonna just kind of keep going in my way. I know these are kind of impromptu, but I'm kind of an impromptu person. I don't really get into a lot of rigmarole about stuff. I like action more than sitting around on my laurels talking about stuff. So, if you appreciate that quality, this is the channel. And I really appreciate everybody's feedback. You've gotten really good questions. Thank you. Thank you so much. All of my subscribers are awesome. I love you guys. I really want to build a great community for you. And I want to keep providing you, decent information. At least I hope it's decent. Because, I kind of have a different perspective. I've been around so many of these things throughout my life. I have a different kind of idea of what they are. I don't. Yeah, some can be dangerous. And yes, there are some I'm very aware of that are dangerous, and I don't get too close to them. But at the same time, I haven't had a lot of really negative experiences, to be honest. I mean, I've been surrounded once. I've had stuff thrown at me. I've had stuff thrown at my dog. And then, and the dog men going nuts around my yurt. Chris, oh my God, Theo, you've been there. You know what the sounds were around that place. You're very aware of all the odd screams and the just weird oddities that happened on that piece of property. Chris came down and spent a couple of nights with me just so he could hear the stuff. And wow, he dang near crawled out of his skin, put it that way. Oh, I'm glad, T, that you really like my channel. I try to give as many details as I can and what I think is going on, you know, comparative to what I've been told and what I see, and then just many years of being out in the field. It's kind of like my turnout never ended in some ways. I'm always, wherever I go, I'm always looking. I mean, just coming here to this spot to do this today's little video, I found a kanji on the pathway in. And I'm like, oh my God, wow, this is really cool. I'm so glad that they communicate with each other. It gives us an opportunity to maybe learn that communication. And that's really my goal here. I want us to try to figure out their language. Because if we can figure out their language, the things that we can learn from them, we can learn their mythology. And because they're in the woods, my God, we might learn about who's doing what in the woods. I mean, the little boogeyman marker to tell me about a bad person, I saw that with Chin Chin. I didn't realize it might happen with another individual or group. I didn't realize that they might actually care whether or not somebody survived a bad person. So that to me was absolutely mind blowing. I mean, that tells me that they really do actually watch us. They do in some way regard us as something they need to protect. Maybe they see us as a weaker species. Maybe they see that we need to be protected from our own species. I know that a lot of them they don't do cannibalism. Cannibalism is a bad judo. That's a no-no for like every cryptid I've ever met. Yes, some of them are meat eaters, like dogmen. They're hardcore meat eaters, but they're not cannibals. They won't eat each other. None of the groups that I've ever run across, not the badger man, none of them, bear man, none of them. They don't eat each other, and they don't eat people. So I'm assuming that the ones that we're having difficulties with that might be 411 involved are going to either be humanoid people like us that are bad and living in the woods probably because they have a background that you can't get housing with. Or you're dealing with some rogue kind of cryptid, maybe one that's outcast, or one that's old, that's ailing, or that's been rejected by its society in some way, because they take care of each other. From birth, I mean, they teach their children. They aren't running on instincts like other animals. They educate their children, they teach them how to build fire, they teach them language, they teach them their religious practices, their social understandings, their social expectations. It's very indigenous people like. So to think that they're going to react poorly to you means we don't have a good grip on what they are. We don't understand what they are well enough to make an accurate decision. So let me look, see what we got more questions. Yeah, I know you crawled out of your skin. You just about wanted to run out the house. I'm so sorry about that, Chris. But thank you for enduring that little trip down there at the yurt. I mean, you've been out in the woods with me where I trade. You've seen some pretty amazing stuff yourself. And you've got the interactions on your property. So I'm so glad you were able to join today. And I still want to interview Theo about him being followed by the Bigfoot up by his father's property out there in New Umpqua. Because, that people get followed. I've been followed out of the woods by some of these things. And oh my God, it scares the living out of you. Because you don't know what their intentions are. It's startling. And to realize how much bigger they are than you. I mean, they can snap you in half like a flippin' twig if they wanted. But they don't. So let's see, EOT, what you got? Oh, Mary, would they help recover missing persons? I've, Jay Mirror, yes, I've actually wondered that. And the reason why I've wondered that is because we do have a missing person case here in the Umpqua. A young man who went AWOL, as it were, a few years ago. And I've talked to the Bigfoot up there. And everything, they lay out, language. And sometimes they'll say words. But they don't, to me, they weren't involved. They saw something. I can tell that. Because of some of the things that they have laid down in Kana. It seems like they witnessed him maybe being put in the trunk of a car, as far as I can tell. And I did talk to his best friend, the young man's best friend who's missing up there. And he's been missing like 4 or 5 years now. The young man that I spoke to, who's a very, very close friend, knew him since childhood, claimed that he had a drug debt to somebody. And he'd gone up that weekend to party. He'd asked the friend, the guy I interviewed, to go up with him to defend him against who he was cheating out of illegal substances. So my guess is that young man probably disappeared because of what he was doing. He was ripping somebody off. And you can't do that when you're dealing with substances like that. It's stupid. And what his friend said, he's pretty sure that he disappeared because of, the illegal things that he was doing. Not because anything grabbed him out of the woods. But, if we can communicate to them, cryptids, yeah, how much can they tell us about what happens around them in their woods? And if they're human, oh my God, could they testify? I mean, just think of the scope here. As long as we keep claiming they're animals and they don't have any intellect, they can do whatever we want. No big deal. As soon as we realize that they can communicate and realize that they have morals, I mean, they stick people in their own culture on pig poles for bad behavior. You don't rape anybody, you don't capture anybody, you don't enslave anybody, you don't beat anybody. Otherwise, you go on a pig pole. So they got morals. I'm pretty sure they understand right and wrong. And I personally think it might be better to create allies, you know, with them than to reject the fact they might be there. I think we're doing ourselves in a little bit by rejecting them. I mean, Native Americans for generations have interacted with them, known about them, and at sometimes taken counsel and learned from them. EOT, they were watching out for you. Yeah, they were. They know for sure good from bad. Yep, I am 100% in agreement with you on that. Everything I've seen, they definitely know that. And Jen Jen's protective behavior when the Gugway was on our property, threatening us, she deliberately put herself physically between that thing and my family. And I heard her fight with that thing more than once. Scared the. I was so worried about her. God, every time though she came out on top, thank God. But man, he kept her captive. He starved her. Bad juju. So yeah, they have bad ones in their culture too. But they're aware of it. And they take care of it. They don't put them in jail. They just take them out of their culture. Mayor, a local Hmong woman, vanished 3.5 miles away from my home. They only found her mushroom pack. Ooh, and dogs couldn't track her. The night she vanished, 2 inches of snow dumped on the mountain. Yeah, that's not good. That could have been an animal, but it could also have been a cryptid. Something, some cryptids are not good. Red bone people. I mean, they'll enslave you, they'll capture you, they'll eat you. They cannibalize their own. Shark tooth people, the mermen, all of those. They're all red bone people, and they are cannibalistic and vicious towards us. Typically, it's very rare that you find one that isn't. I have found one family of Gugway in this valley that are not bad, but it's because the Guanche in the area pretty much did have stomped down on them and told them they couldn't do what they were doing anymore. They had to mind their manners. And there is a couple of dogmen in this area that I always get warned away from, and they have green eyes at night. Their eye shines green, and they're a little bit bigger. So I avoid them. My mom showed me where one of those was up in the Umpqua, a big green-eyed dog man. We went up to a waterfall, have lunch, and she wouldn't let me out of the vehicle. She said, no, absolutely not. We're going to sit inside the vehicle. I don't care if you want to go swimming. I don't care if it's broad daylight. This thing's in the area, and it doesn't mind coming down in daylight. So we're there maybe 20, 30 minutes. I've just finished my lunch. And out of the corner of my eye, I see this shadow that's about 8 feet tall, just walking between two trees in the tree line. So I turned just a little bit to look at it. And my mom says, don't look at it, it will come down. I said, what do I do? She says, well, just watch it for the corner of your eye. It's very aggressive. He's rogue. He was cast out of his group. And the Guanche in this area won't let him go further down into the woods. They've created a, physical, they'll beat the shit out of him if he tries to get closer to humanity. And the times I've been up in that area when he's present, The guanch up there will, power knock and let me know he's in the area, and I always turn around, get the out of dodge, because I believe what my mom said. And if I've got guanch trying to protect me, I'm not gonna say no to 8, 10 foot tall guys that are gonna beat the hell out of a freaking dog man to keep me safe. I'll do that. No, I'm okay with that. Uh, Leona, I've heard so many different people's accounts that I have no doubt that they teach their young. Yeah, they do. I mean, when Oma, Oma is also a word means mother in Japanese. So I oftentimes call Jen Jen, not only her tribal name, Oma, mother, because they were the prodigenators of our people according to their mythology. It was an Oma woman and a dog man that created us. They were our parents according to their mythology, so they kind of watch out for us. And it's interesting, not maybe a month or two after she and I actually started interacting on a day-to-day basis. She went up, she broke the limb on the top of a poplar tree, and all of a sudden I'm being taught the stick language by her, and then it was helping me make sense of what I'd been learning from Uncle Ong's papers, all the little sounds and the strokes that he had written down for me. They were starting to congeal a little bit when Jen Jen was showing me her language. I could understand some of it, and my family really kind of teased me, but they say, "Oh, your mumbly monkey language," because I'd always go out and come back with new sentences or new words, and I would have to try to ask my mother or have my mother call my grandmother. What does this mean? What does this mean? What am I saying? I don't know what she's telling me. So it took, a couple of months for me to kind of get a hang of the language. It took about a year, and I don't really have a good grasp. It's only conversational, but it's enough, enough to get along with the groups. And I've learned enough kana to read them somewhat. And God, I wish my grandmother would have lived longer. She died before she could teach me much of the language verbally, and that's I'm communicating them to them like a child. But it's worked out. They always guide me, and they always correct me when I make mistakes in pronunciation or when I don't lay the sticks down right. They'll rearrange them to show me the correct kana. Neat experience. I'll have to try to capture that in video. It doesn't happen very often, but it would be neat to catch. Okay. Yeah, a lot of them do have an accommodating nature. It's astounding, actually, how accommodating some of these individuals can be. They're very patient with you as humans, actually. Okay. Specifically about us. That funny you mentioned that, Leona, because I know of an area where there's some private property, and the family runs like a little stand, and they've got a vending machine. Um, now this is the weirdest thing. So every spring, they will they'll open up their back gates so that the cryptids that live on the back side of the property can come up to the vending machine. And the little ones will try to lay down stick patterns to ask if they can trade for the items out of the vending machines with people. And it's kind of to let the young cryptids know that people don't understand their language and they can't respond. So that'll go on for like, 3, 4 weeks, a month, so that the young cryptid realize that people can't be traded with. We don't know how to speak their language anymore. And then all the little stick trading emblems, little kana will go away and it won't occur again. But they do that every spring. Uh, and, that it kind of breaks my heart, to be honest, because there's such a potential there. Yeah, I know they're trying to trade for items out of the vending machine, but at the same times, they're trying to initiate communication, and we're too ignorant to understand that fact. So I think mostly they teach their young that we are too dumb to communicate and that we need to be avoided because we might be dangerous to them. They do kind of see us as intrusive coyotes. Our behavior is impolite. We don't announce ourselves and we don't act like they do, so they kind of nah. And when we do see them, we freak out. We react poorly. We scream or we panic, and that I think really kind of upsets them in a way. It was something I noticed about Jen Jen. Uh, I actually got really angry at her when I was about 6. I tried to teach her my ABCs when I went to school. And I took a slate board out and I tried to teach her A, B, C. She wrote A, she wrote B, and then she didn't want to write C, so I grabbed her hand and tried to make her write C. She broke the writer, the piece of the stylus, the piece to write on the slate board, and dropped it. And she says, I already know. So I'm like, I didn't, even at 6, I didn't realize, she was teaching me her language. I just hadn't caught it. I'm too dumb to think about it. And then I kind of swatted her. I told her she was a stupid monkey. And she kind of shoved me away and she says, not a monkey. And then she crawled away. She left. Well, the following day, I got put in the doghouse. She laid out this little stick pattern that looked like a house. It had the bottom, the walls, and then the roof. And she put a oak gall in the middle of the little house structure. And when I came to say hello to her the following day after I'd hit her, she looked at me and she said, you're in the doghouse. Go away. Don't want to talk to you. Bad behavior. She didn't talk to me for like 2 weeks. I thought I'd lost my friend. But it was to teach me a lesson that I had inappropriately acted. And then I apologized, and it was actually the fact that I called her a monkey is what had really angered her. Not that I had hit her, not that I had tried to teach her my ABCs, or that anything else. It was that I had called her a monkey. And she did not identify. She said, I'm a person. My name, Jen Jen, means golden person. She had been named Golden Person because she had a clear skin birthmark across her face, and she had clear skin on the bottom of her feet, which is why she wore moccasins. She made her own shoes to protect her feet from sunburn. And her parents had named her Golden Person, and you can look up the name. It's a Pinyin Mandarin name, and it goes through very, very varied cultures throughout Asia. There are many Koreans use the name, Japanese use the name. It all means golden person. So her name is documentable. And then her last name, Manong. There are very few people left in the world that have her last name, maybe 2 or 3,000. Again, that makes me wonder, are we related? Is this where we get our naming practices from? Is this where we get our morality from? Is this where we get our concept of taking care of each other from? I mean, there's just too many questions in this puzzle. Let me try to answer a few more questions. So, hello, Jason. Good to see you. It was good to run across you the other day. Great to see you here. Danny, yeah, you're welcome. No problem. I just don't want this knowledge lost. I don't have a complete story. I don't have a complete mythology. But what I do have, I feel, is important enough to make sure that others are aware of it. Who or what is responsible for all of the disappearing people, do they work together to hide evidence? I know actually, I think a lot of that has to do with human trafficking, to be honest. When I'm out in the woods, I've seen some bizarre stuff. I've seen some stuff that, you know, I just can't explain. I've watched people walk in the woods with kids and not walk out with them. And I know if I make a phone call, I'm probably going to be the one getting in trouble. Because the people that do that kind of thing, that they're in business suits. They gotta know people. So, I think a lot of it's actually human. Some of it might be cryptids, but I think it's a very low percentage that it's cryptids. I think because they're a mythological creature, it's a good way of hiding what you're doing as a human. As long as you can keep the myth going, you're safe from intrusion from people going, hey, there's something not right here. But again, there are some cryptids that might pick people up out of it. There are still some flying creatures around that might take you for dinner. There are still some cryptids that are red bone people. I don't trust them. Anything that's got a shark tooth, I don't trust it. Anything that's got what looks like a coral eating mouth set, I don't trust it. And there is a Bigfoot here in Oregon. He's white, and from what I've been told, he's got a jaw set that look like a coral eating fish. He's telepathic. There's a woman that communicates with him. She's done so for many, many years. I used to know a neighbor of hers, and it's shy. It doesn't like showing off its privates. So it'll steal bed sheets off people's clotheslines, tie around its waist like a sarong, so it doesn't, show its privates to people. So it's very self-conscious. This woman has a good relationship with it. I'm still skeptical. I've never seen it. I've heard stories about it. I'm not real interested in going and investigating it. Just because, I've got so much here I can look at. No problem, Esther. I'd rather that this information, what little bits I have that were preserved over the last 5 generations, I'd rather that it's out. Because I don't have anyone to pass it on to. I don't have anyone I can put through the training to go out and look for these things and interact with them. Everybody in my family, I was the youngest, so everybody in my family is either my age or they're so modernized they don't have any interest in preserving old knowledge. So I'm left with either letting it die out or trying to put it in books or, trying to share it openly, which is my choice. My grandmother wished that. She wanted people to understand this information. So that's what I'm attempting to do. Yeah, I'm sorry I never shared that with you, Chris. But yeah, she had a last name, Manong. Well, I know that feeding them, I wouldn't say it's feeding them. I know it was common within my tribal culture to always leave food items for them when you pass through. It's polite. The other is it always assured that we had safe passage. Because if they're given a meal, typically they don't care if you go through their area as long as you steal anything from them without asking. So you always have to trade. You can't take without giving. So we always left trade items. We'd always leave food or we would leave a tool, something, anything to trade with them so that we'd have a good relationship and they would let us, go through their territory without problem. And sometimes, when we were out in hunting parties, they might protect us from things like cougar or bear. And whenever they followed us on a hunting party, we would always give them part of what we'd hunted. We would give them a hindquarter, or we would give them the heart. We would give them a portion because we knew they were people. We were in their hunting grounds. We were intruding. We were trespassing, technically. And some of my hunter friends that have had problems with their catches getting stolen, I usually say, hey, bring a six pack out. Leave them a six pack, or leave them part of your deer when you shoot it. Leave them something. It helps, and usually it works. Trade this for that, always giving something in return for what you get. And the little cross sticks, that's always just what I can spare. You give them something extra. Yeah, no problem, Leona. I'm happy to share the stories. Some of them are fucking strange. Some of the stuff I've been through, I can't even believe I've been through it, to be honest. I mean, on my turnout, I saw some of the strangest things. But I'm going to save that kind of information for once I get 1,000 subscribers or more. I'll reserve that sort of thing for some of my patrons, so to speak. And yeah, I do want to go back in the field. I need a vehicle. I need to get back out to show you guys some of the really neat stuff. A lot of what's inside of the city limits has been destroyed. Feral humans in tents, just disrespecting stuff. Um, People who own property in the area taking stuff out. People who manage properties just ripping bed systems out and taking down marker trees. A lot of stuff that I really wanted to show you that was inside the city limits has been destroyed by housing complexes or contractors building buildings, and just a lot. Oh my God, there's been such a loss in the last 20 years. That's kind of, what kind of aggravated me when I was doing my last broadcast. It just realizing where I was sitting and how much has been lost in this area. Uncle Ong's beautiful tree that had all of the hearts and the trident marker for the Thunderbird tribes. Just, I wanted to show you guys that stuff so bad because it was so cool. I wanted you to see some of the special things here, but they're just gone now. They're lost in history. Time's taken them. Yeah, you too. But hey, any place you go where you find a snapstick, and I don't care if you're looking at sidewalk ninjas in your town, or out on a local dog park walk, or you're over in a local campsite or hiking area or fishing hole, you're gonna find this stuff. You're gonna find kana, you're gonna find kanji, you're gonna find snapsticks, you're gonna find the little bent structures, the sit spots like I'm sitting in today. This stuff is everywhere. They don't. People think, oh, you can force them out. No, we camp on top of them. We built our homes literally in the middle of their territories. So they don't change their behavior. And I don't think, I think that probably 90% of them are not really that dangerous to us. Unless you're getting into a face eater or a sun-faced person or something that is cannibalistic to their own kind, then yeah, you're we're prey at that point. Like we were prey for, our own kind. Not uncommon. But I don't think they hunt us for food. I don't, yeah, I mean, some of them. The face eater, I'm pretty sure that thing eats us. And there are some rumors that in this area that the tunnel system below this city actually has some sort of a reptile of some kind in it. There have been a lot of people who live down in those tunnel systems that have seen it. I've been down in the tunnel systems looking for it. I've smelt it. I've heard it hiss. I don't want a dang thing to do with it. I've exited the tunnel systems because I swear to God it's got to be a huge ass snake. And there are people who have reported that it is some sort of a python that tries to wrap you if you are asleep down in the tunnel systems. So if you are, living in a big city and you're going down into tunnel systems and you think it's safe, be careful. There are things down there. There are potentially cryptids in underground systems. So And I don't think they're Bigfoot. I think they're more reptilian. Reptiles have a tendency to live underground anyway. They dig burrows like rodents. There aren't very many monkeys that have ever lived in caves other than, Neanderthals, a few Cro-Magnon, what, uh, Neanderthalensis, lenses, a few of those lived in caves. But today we don't have primates that live in caves. I mean, chimpanzees will take refuge in bubble caves if they're predators in the area. Baboons will take refuge in caves if they're predators in an area. Deforestation has led to, like, lemurs and a few other bonobos or other chimpanzees that take refuge in caves, but it's because they're missing territory. So if you got a cryptid that's going in underground, either that's their natural habitat and they're after, the food source, which would be a reptile, or you're dealing with one that's having to, like a humanoid, trying to take refuge from territory loss, from, you know, they to have to take cover. So to me, it seems kind of silly to think that these things live in caves. Everything that I've seen lives either up in a tree in a basket, you know, branches woven together, or sleeps on the ground like a gorilla. So, to me, a lot of what's being said about them is not logical from what I understand. Jen, she always slept on the ground. She slept in her old chicken coop, but she slept on the ground. She didn't make any fancy structure. She slept on the bare ground. And the few structures I have found isn't much more typically than, a few bent branches and a spot to lay. Let me look at some more, yeah, six pack. Hey, I know of a Bigfoot up in Washington that he'd go down on the beach, and if you left beer behind, open or closed, he'd steal it and drink it. And he'd build a repository. He'd hide bottles in in little storage areas, in little refrigerators. He'd take a pit. He'd put like 20, 30 freaking bottles of beer in this thing, cover it over with bark, and he'd put moss on top of it, and he'd pile brush on top of it. Yeah, I caught him going to his beer fridge one dusk one evening. That's how I found out where they were. That was funny. I did not expect to find something like that, to be quite honest. It totally startled me. But then there are, ancient stories. In ancient Babylonia, there's stories about Gilgamesh. They got that, what Pliny the Elder probably would have called Liberus Satyros. They got him drunk and introduced him to a lady of the evening that taught him their language, and she learned his. And meanwhile, they were drunk together out in his territory for months before they took him into town to tell the king what to do. And there are other stories, ancient times, like Alexander the Great talked about capturing one by getting it drunk. Pliny the Elder and Suetonius talked about trappers and hunters that would go out and catch Liberus Satyros, the hairy man, by getting him drunk. Uh, Nero had 200 of them in a school called the Ludi School for fighting. His royal guard that wore golden armor, if you read Suetonius's original works in Latin, you'll find out they were monkey men wearing gold freaking suits of armor. So, makes me really wonder. That, and there are lots of ancient depictions of them. There are mosaics, murals, pottery, all kinds of stuff through the ancient Greco-Roman world, through the ancient Syrian Babylonian world that all depict these kinds of creatures. My God. And stories, there are fragments of stories telling about how some hunters specialized in catching unusually large reptiles, unusual, what looked like dinosaurs from the descriptions and the depictions of them, and then the Bigfoot people. And there are accounts of them fighting in the arena. In fact, there is a story. Let's see, Claudius. I think it was right after Caligula was killed. There's a story during Claudius's time. Claudius actually freed an enslaved Bigfoot man and gave him his freedom that had fought in the arena. He didn't leave Rome after he was freed. He was given, the rubius, the wooden sword and the wooden ring, and he was given a 50,000 sestertii a year stipends. He stayed around the Colosseum. He married a whore. He had a child with a whore named Proculus. Proculus became a venator and performed in the Roman gladiatorial pit. There are stories about him creating like teeter-totters and Ferris wheel structures, all to perform to show off his prowess and his acrobatics. The description of Proculus, he didn't have a lot of hair. He still was kind of hairy compared to other people, but he wasn't like his father. He had incredibly long arms and legs with a very short torso, and he was known for running up the walls of the Colosseum and doing backwards flips over the animals. Now, venators were, those that killed wild animals, and his specialty was to jump on the backs of the animals and break their necks. He was quite a good performer, and he also worked as a freed individual. He wasn't enslaved. He hired on as a venator fighter in the Colosseum, and he was paid regular for what he did. And you can find, if you read Suetonius's works about the gladiatorial games, you'll find out some really nifty information. Let me get back to a few questions here. Oh, I'm so glad that you finally made it to alive, Mom. What Tocobellas? Tocobellas. Glad you made it here. I'm going to try to make these a little longer. I'm going to try to extend them into over an hour, just so I can give some more information and answer a few more questions and help clarify things. All right, you take care, Chris. Thank you for coming in today. I'm so glad that you were able to make it. I know, it's some pretty wild information, isn't it, Olaf? Some of the interactions I've had with Jen, I spent 4.5, almost 5 years near her. She interacted with me and lived on our property. So I got to know quite a bit about the Oma people. And they're not what you think. They're not big, hairy, scary for the most part. Now there are some that are. And don't get me wrong, there are some that are dangerous. There are some you have to be very careful of. But even those, the dog man harassed the heck out of me. He never really hurt me. He was trying to mind screw me. He was trying to intimidate me. He was trying to make me leave. And when I refused, when I stood my ground and told him, not happening, buddy, his attitude changed. But then, if he was something that wouldn't take that rebuttal, I could have been in a lot of trouble. I could have been killed. And the sun-based people I was around during my turnout, they're very cunning. They could have ripped they could have ripped our home apart, but instead they chose to steal our tools and take the side of our home apart. To me, they were saying, hey, we're cunning enough to know how to take your building apart. You need to either leave or we might just rip it apart. So even they, that I know were dangerous, that I had been warned about, and I knew would potentially enslave me or assault me, because they assaulted a Yaran female. 4 of those sun-faced young adolescents held a Yaran woman down and molested her. That's where when I discovered that horses will attack sun-faced people. I didn't know that, and that's probably why they killed the horses, because the horses were trying to protect the Yaren woman from their attacks. And they caught her more than once. They tried to catch me a couple of times. Oh my God, a couple of times I really had to become a rock, become a bush, and get the heck out of Dodge. So to me, that behavior was they knew they were smart. They knew they could do what they wanted, but they chose not to. So, they preyed upon their own kind more than they preyed upon me, but they still intimidated my mother and I and let us know, we know how to do things. So to me, that's way more cunning than an animal. I'm sorry. Animals don't grab a flippin' screwdriver to take screws out of the side of a building. It just doesn't happen. So let me go back up to some more questions. Hey Sheldon, welcome from Ohio. I know you guys have a lot of grass people out in Ohio. I know you got a lot of cryptids there. I'm very aware that people see them all the time in Ohio. And in fact, my grandfather's side, my father's father, was from the flat belt, as he said. And he said growing up, they had a lot of interactions where they trapped and where they hunted with, cryptids. So I'm sure you have plenty of them there. Doug, or Dong, I believe that is the case, because my father, he had genetic tests done on my mother, I, and himself. And he had what he thought was homolongi DNA in him. Now, these tests were from the 60s and 70s, so they may not have been very accurate. And my mother and I both had unknown DNA. But my father had unusually long arms and legs. His arms almost reached his knees. And he had a funny gait. When he walked, he kind of loped. He had almost what you call a Bigfoot walk. He flipped his arms and kind of loped along. And I know that my my behavior, where I feel comfortable, where I go into the woods to be at peace, to meditate, I always end up in a cryptid location. So I'm really beginning to think, the bald head. I know that Gugway are the only cryptid that I've ever seen that has a bald head. Uncle Long and my grandmother's myths, the legends about where humans get baldness from. Supposedly from the Gugway. Potential. And I've met people that just have some really unique eye colors. Like I met a fellow up in Canada when I was living up there. Excuse me. He had yellow eyes. His irises were yellow. They were bright yellow. His father's eyes, too, were the same way. And they were literally that way on his paternal side for generations. And he told me a story that he believed that, there had been an instance of molestation in their family that produced a yellow-eyed individual. And from that day forward on his paternal side, they had the bright yellow irises. So unusual hair color, the red hair color, green eyes. Fox spirits over in Japan, they're always known as green-eyed people. Lots of legends about six-toed people here in the Americas, the giants with green eyes and red hair. It really makes me wonder. And it also makes me wonder if are we really going to be able to map our own genetics without exposing our cryptid relations to them? There are a lot of people now that are getting DNA tests that say unknown DNA. I've talked to 3 or 4 people here in this town alone who've done, not ancestral DNA, but archaic DNA tests on themselves. And they've come up with unknown DNA. I want to know my unknown DNA. Does it correlate to their unknown DNA? Can we start building some patterns of unknown DNA? In Denisovan, that's a new DNA that we just found, the third and fourth forms of Neanderthal. Come on. Science is going to end up exposing this, whether they want to or not. I mean, Zana, she was just noted as Africanus DNA, except the descriptions of her don't match. And I know that they did not actually expose the evidence on her DNA. They only exposed the evidence on her son, Kowit. Now that's another thing. Kowit. The name Kowit, it's a Filipino word from the Tagalogs. Uh, People that weren't even discovered in 1870 or 1860 when she named her child Kowit. Kowit is a Tagalog word. It's an ending. It means I finished my thought. I quit this thought. It's like a period or a comma. So how did she name her child Kowit, a Filipino Tagalog word, and somehow she's African? Excuse me? Doesn't make any sense. Go look up the word Kowit. And Dr. Bindernagel said that they refused to expose the DNA evidence on Zana. They weren't going to publish it. What about that? I really want to know what her DNA revealed. Government only exposed Kowit's DNA. And that could, that's her husband's DNA. So let me go down here and try to answer some more questions. Yes, the very first night, the second night that I moved into the yurt down in Douglas County, I was sitting with my friend, and we ended up getting rocks thrown very accurately, mind you, through a tiny gap. So we had a front porch that extended probably 10 feet out, probably 15 feet across. We had a bear door, and then the people that had put the fucking bear door in left an open 3-foot eave with no partition. So the bear door was goddamn useless. A bear could have climbed over the dang bear door and gotten in. So the dog man in the area chucked a rock through that 3-foot opening in the eave. So yeah, they use their hands like we use ours. And yeah, they have like raccoon type hands. They got little claws on their fingers, but they still can grasp items. They still throw stuff. So yes, dogmen will throw things at you just like, Skackum or Oma or Guanch will do. Oh yes, Uncle Ong had a wild sense of humor, and so does my Guanch father. My Guanch father, when I met him, and he told me his name, and that his tribal name was Guanch, the first thing out of his mouth was, yeah, my parents were really original with naming me. And Uncle Ong, Uncle Ong was, like I said, he was a Doctor Who fan. So the last time I saw him, he was doing his Tom Baker Doctor Who thing. He walked by me initially on the sidewalk, and he was carrying his little white candy bag full of rocks, rock candy that looked like rocks that you get like at the touristy places out on the coast, but they call it pebble candy. And then he had a few rocks, which he chewed on because he ate rocks as part of his diet. Well, that was his diet. So he would offer people as he was walking down the road, would you like a rock? Yeah, he had quite the sense of humor. So yeah, he met up with me later. He said, how do you like my skit? And I said, yeah, it's great. You offer him rocks. Do you ever let him chew a real rock? He says, no, my God, they break their teeth. Yeah, he was quite the character. I really love that man. Oh God, I wish we could have known him for more than 18 years. But I'm so glad that I got to know him for the 18 years or so that I did know him. If, yeah, it would have been nice to have. I never got to go to where he lived. He always came to where I lived, and he would always come to visit me. I would have loved to have known where he really was. I heard stories, but then again, whatever. It's what it was. I'm just happy to have known somebody that my father really revered and that my father had known for many, many years in his life. And my father would tell me stories about Uncle Long and him and Badger Man sitting and telling each other camp stories while he was trapping here on the Willamette. He would sometimes spend 2 or 3 nights just sitting and talking with them and telling stories while he was out trapping. It was a regular thing for him. I don't really have uh, all of that information prepared as far as the Greco-Roman stuff. You're going to have to do some of your own research on that. Unfortunately, I can direct you to some of the documents. So, with Pliny the Elder, what you look through are his natural histories books. There are 10 volumes, and I think it's in volumes 5 through 7, if I remember right, are his discussions on fish, birds, mammals, and cryptids. So you have to do some digging. Suetonius. Let me think. There is a book called Gladiator. I think Scott Pegg is the writer of it. In that book, the individual is specifically dealing with gladiatorial games and the history of. And he taught himself Latin so that he could translate information about the gladiatorial games. So it's a really gruesome read. Don't pick it up unless you got a strong will. But in the middle of that book, I'm thinking it's like through pages like 60, 62 to like 79 is a description of Proculus and his Venator uh, relationship as a fighter in the gladiatorial pit, and it tells about his father's freeing and that whole little scenario there. But I would have to do some more digging, and then in Theogenes, I want to say books 60, no, books 76 and 79 in that sequence of his books, Theogenes, books called Works and Days, is a description of the Solomonese Islands and the Solomonese people and the Guanche people that lived there, and an encounter that happened by merchants that ended up losing some of their people, and the description of what happened, and why women were no longer allowed to board ships after that incident. If you read the story, you'll know why. So those are a few things that I can direct you to off the top of my head. I can do some more research. Over this winter, when I'm not going to be able to be out as much doing field work, I will probably do a little more digging in my local school libraries, college libraries in particular, and see what I can point you to and direct you to. Maybe I can do a little more direct on some ancient information, just try to fill in some gaps. And besides, I figured at this point you got quite a reference of videos that you can use as guides and material to help you do what you're doing. The Ohio River area has a lot of information, and there are lots of mounds in those areas. And in fact, we have here in southern Oregon, around Mount Shasta, if I remember right,
a whole bunch of mounds in that area. Scientists try to tell you, oh yeah, it's all just an earthquake. The local natives say, no, 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 these are all little burial mounds. And don't try to go to your university to try to get information. They won't tell you anything about them. They'll just kind of shun you away and say, oh, no, 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 we don't know anything about that. Refer to your guides down at the, sighting areas, where you have your little tourist informational placards, and that's about all you're going to get on that kind of thing. Your brother has yellow. Wow. Yellow eyes. I've only ever met one other individual that has yellow eyes. That is amazing, Yoshi. Wow. It's things like that. The unusual eye color, or, some people's ability to see more colors, or hear better, or see at night better. All of that really makes me wonder. And then a lot of people want to throw away Melba Ketchum's work for DNA work. I downloaded 15 hours after she put that thing up. I downloaded her entire 44-page DNA before she even presented it to the colleges for their scrutiny. Her DNA lab work there's nothing wrong with it. She used over 100 samples in 73 different test laboratories from all over the world. She didn't tell anybody what was in the samples. She just handed off samples, said, unknown, test it, figure out what it is. And out of all of the labs that she sent the samples to, and this is a project that Dr. John Vandernagle was involved in, and I actually offered some of my samples during that time. John said, no, just hang on to your stuff for later. I was okay. So I know for a fact that there's nothing wrong with her testing. What's wrong is that the scientific community and the colleges don't want to admit what she found. And what she found in her tests, in the information. Mind you, she was involved with a lot of different projects genetically throughout his, modern culture. She's not dumb. She's not inaccurate on her information. She's been involved in international studies before. And that's why Dr. John Vandernagle went to her to begin with, just because she had such a good reputation. They weren't aware that it would end up destroying her reputation to do this. They figured there would be enough with 100 samples and with 73 different testing labs involved that it should be pretty cut and dry, that there wasn't any tomfoolery going on. So some of the things that she discovered, and I did review it. I've reviewed other genetics tests. We had to do genetics sometimes on our mink. I got to review my own genetics test. My father walked me through his genetic tests. Nothing wrong with Melba's work. Green eyes, red hair, part of the way our digestive system works and part of the way our immune system works all come from cryptids, according to her research. And yes, when I find the original 44-page genetic document that she did, I will pull it out and I will show you what I am very aware of as very accurate in her information. And in fact, I might do just a flip page, do a complete video so there is a complete access to that information and you can judge it for yourself at that point. Because I have an untainted copy, an uncorrected copy. Nothing's been messed with on that copy. Yeah, red hair and green eyes. And I have AB negative blood type. So did my mom. My dad had O negative. A lot of negative blood types also seem to be a factor with the Bigfoot people. And when you look at our blood typing, only 15% of the world's population have AB negative blood type, or negative blood type, period. That might be an indication that, our blood types might have come from another creature, something older, our ability to digest. Some of the other bizarre things all of the people in my family have, well, with the exception of my brother who has lost his, um, You know that funny little appendix thing that doesn't work in human beings? I have a working appendix. My mother had a working appendix. My native grandmother had a working appendix. I can eat nightshade and it won't kill me. My grandmother, she could eat iris pulp and it didn't kill her. My mom and I both eat fuchsia berries. Doesn't kill us. So that little factor there, I think, might be something that is an active thing in cryptids. And I think the appendix is maybe something we inherited from them. And because we no longer interbreed with them, we don't end up having them function. And that again makes me wonder if the generational story is 5 generations back. And we had a male in our family that was a Bigfoot of some kind. Maybe that's the reason why I have a working appendix. Really makes me wonder. Yeah, her work was solid. And I'm very, very positive that the peerage process is full at S. So, besides, I had to go through that stuff when I was in college. I decided I wasn't going to go through the front door to get into my PhD level college courses and my potential doctorate. I decided to take PhD level courses in order to pass them with a D or better average for my grades so that I could just go into my PhD level courses and their college couldn't do a dang thing about it. And the reason is because it was well known that I had an interest in cryptids. And when I went over to my course director to get into my PhD level courses, they point blank told me, we don't want your kind here. You might say something we don't want you to say, and you will never have a peer review. I said, well, that's fine. I got the door behind me, and now I'm going to leave, and you have a nice day. I'll go ahead and do what I want to do. Meh, whatever. Yeah, I'm sorry. The sound on my phone doesn't always seems like it likes to, and I didn't have it turned up. My bad. I'm so sorry. I gotta remember to do that. I get so excited by, oh boy, I want to say something. I want to talk to people. I want to answer questions. I'm sorry. My bad. You're B negative, EOT. I have, like 7 negative RH factors to my blood. My brother has 18 negative RH factors to his blood. He has 44 people in the world that have his blood type. I have about 1,500 that have my blood type. So again, that to me, that's suggesting that that's a very, very ancient blood type. Yes, and I have noticed that some of us that have Rh negative blood type will have an extra vertebrae. And it will either be in our neck or it will be near our tailbone. And there's a funny thing about that as well. I met a woman when I was up in Washington. She was from Turkey. And I'm going to tell her story probably the next live that I do, because she told me about her grandfather having a fused bone next to his hip bracket. And how I got into the conversation with her is because she walked in a bent over position, like the Bigfoot do. So I asked her what happened to her back. How did she damage it? She said, no, I was born this way. Myself, my father, and my grandfather all had a fused bone in our lower back, right above our hip bracket. Doesn't allow us to bend over completely or move certain ways. And she described her great grandfather as being red skinned, and he was part of the Tengu tribes, according to what she said. So I want to get into her details next show, because
if what she told me is true, then we are definitely related to probably all of these things in one way or another, be it through, congenial relationships or abuse. If something can mate with you, it's going to mate with you, whether you want it to or not. And, you either have to keep it or you have to kill it. So if we kept any of the offspring, then there's a good chance we all have some genetic relations here that we aren't aware of.
Yep, your blood is 2% of the population. Yep, I know. Yeah, believe me, my family's got some very bizarre factors about our blood, about our DNA. I'm sure there's plenty of other people around the world that have the same sort of thing
Going on. Well, I think I am going to head out, and thank you to everyone. You have a great day. Bye bye.